Okay, welcoming Noriko Suzumura to the Sasuga podcast. So this is great because I asked Team Sasuga for recommendations. Who would you love to have interviewed on the Sasuga podcast? And Yumi, who is one of the Team Sasuga members, she said Noriko Suzumura would be great. So I'm actually talking to Noriko for the first time today, and we've just had a little chat before we got going with the recording, and I already know that I definitely want to meet Noriko in person and chat more because she's fabulous. So I'm going to hand over to you, Noriko, and just ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what sort of communicator you want to be.
Sure. Thank you for your great introduction. Now you're giving me a lot of pressure to do this, right? So I have been working for the same company for 20 years, taking on different roles. But majority of the time I have been spending as a leader. I currently manage a team of 5 people. The last 4 years I spent in London, I was managing up to 90 people. So taking on different roles, different responsibilities, and that gave me a lot of opportunity to communicate to different type of people, both in Japan and outside of Japan. I also have led a women's community as part of the global co-lead. And that really gave me an exposure to communicate in a very, with a very different stakeholders as well. So that's kind of who I am. And I'm Japanese. I was in Japan until I was 21 years old. So being Japanese sometimes makes it difficult for you to communicate on a global stage. And sometimes you take advantage of that as well.
So what do you mean by that? What's difficult and how do you take advantage of it?
So what I found, my 20 years in this company, I spent 2 years in the States, 3 years in London, 10 years in Tokyo, 4 years in London, and I'm back in Tokyo now. Wow. So my last assignment in London, I was a manager managing about 90 people, 5 team leaders. And what I found out is, when you're Japanese, you are told to wait until somebody finishes and then you speak out. Right? If you have that kind of mentality in London, you will never be able to speak out.
Yeah.
And what does that mean as a manager if you can't voice your opinions, right? So I had to change the way I come across, like in a meeting setting. And now coming back, I had to adjust it back, because then if I'm talking over other people, I look like I'm a very rude person. So there's a lot of adjustments that I think, interculturally, like that had to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking about who you're communicating with and adjusting your communication style to that person or that group of people.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Oh, this is just so great. I can tell right now that listeners and people who are watching the video version of this as well, you're going to be inspiring so many people, Noriko. So this is fantastic.
Thank you.
So tell us about your amazing career. I'm sure you've had plenty of successes with communication. So what's a success story that you can share with us?
So this is going back about 2 years. I was in one of these leadership management course, and there's one very senior manager that I look up to, and he has said that if you want to be a good communicator, try not to read. Like if you're speaking something so if you're speaking over 10 minutes, in my business, you usually have PowerPoint, or you have you're on the fireside chat kind of style. Yeah. So you don't have to prepare. But if you're making 5-minute, 10-minute speech, his advice was not to read. And he actually doesn't read himself, which means that you need to prepare much earlier than you should. You need to practice a lot, and you have to know what you're saying, and you have to get over your nervousness when you're presenting. Yeah. So after listening to this senior manager, I said, you know what? I'll do that. I'll follow the same. I'm going to push myself not to read. And I've been doing that in the last 2 years. And that is something that I'm proud of. And because if you're speaking in front of say 100 people, and if you're not reading,
Mm-hmm.
What it means is that you will walk around with your microphone, you have eye contacts with people, and you look confident, right? And because you care about how you look in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not standing behind the podium, reading the piece of paper. So that's something that I have done, and I have received good feedback from people who are in the audience. And I did that. So like when you have you sometimes get invited to weddings, like Japanese
Mm-hmm.
wedding, you have to invite your boss, unfortunately. And I recently made a speech, like a keynote speech at the very beginning of the wedding. And I was kind of proud of myself that I didn't read. Like it's usual that the wedding speech is something that people read off of a paper, and I did not do that. So that's something that I would consider a success after 20 years.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so great that you feel proud of it. And I'm sure that for people who are listening to you or watching you in the audience, they feel more of a connection when you're talking and you don't have that podium or the script in front of you.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. So what about then something that didn't go so well in communication in your career, your communication nightmare? Could you share that with us?
Sure. So when I think back and look at my failure in terms of communication, I was always vague.
Yeah.
So this is a long time ago, I told one of the team leaders, just use your common sense. And there's no common sense in a work environment. People's common sense differs person to person. And I made a massive mistake saying not follow your common sense. And she made a mistake, which became my mistake. And because my guidance was vague. And that's something that I had to pick up and learn.
Yeah.
And another example of being vague is when you're giving constructive feedback, right? So you want somebody to be better. You want somebody to take on a feedback, a negative one. And if you mix that feedback with something positive, right? So, so and so, you're great at this. I love working with you. And I think this is one area you can improve. And that person can take it as, oh, Noriko gave me a very good message, right? I'm on the right track. And that's something that I'm aware, especially giving some, especially when there's a risk.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I was just, we can't swear on this podcast because we have to keep the language clean. But there's an expression that I learned, which is the BS sandwich, which is when you say, oh, you're doing great at this. And then you give like the really negative feedback and like, keep up the good work. And like, people don't, that's just not useful, because it just really sends those kind of mixed messages, and people just don't take on the feedback as it should be. So I love that. Yeah, keep that constructive feedback separate. So when you're giving the positive feedback, plenty of positive feedback when it's deserved, and then the constructive. That's
exactly. And then one thing I found it easier to either give or receive constructive feedback is you set the stage.
Yeah.
So you say, we are meeting today because I want to give you some constructive feedback. And then the person will take it as, okay, I am now ready. I don't know what she's going to say, how bad it is, but I'm ready to take on that feedback. And then I like the same if my peers or boss or whoever is giving me feedback is saying that, there's some constructive feedback for you. And then I'm so mentally prepared to take it on.
Exactly. And then people respect you, right? Because you've been really upfront about it, and you've given them that constructive feedback directly.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. So we always learn from those, when things don't go well, there's always something good that comes out of it.
Exactly.
So in episode 46 of the Sasuga podcast, for those who've listened to that episode, I talked about a change in my business focus. So really looking more towards supporting women in Japan in feeling more, kind of bringing out their brilliance. So feeling more confident, being more productive without burning out, and also getting results that you want in your business and life. So I wanted to just touch on these topics with you as well, Noriko, if that's okay. So
Sure.
confidence. What is something where you didn't have confidence in the past and you do have confidence now?
So so in my 20 years, as I mentioned, I have changed roles, places that I worked, and every move is a challenge. You start with zero confidence or negative confidence, and you have to build it up. But once it doesn't matter what it is, you try hard, you nail something, and you move on, and then you lose your confidence again. But you look back and think, you know what, I've done it once. This is new, but I know I can do it. And then the next challenge that starts up, after several years, and you start something brand new, and you look back and say, you know what, you've done it twice. You can do it this time as well, right? So my new role that I have come back to Tokyo for is very new. Not only that you're challenged internally and yourself, but you are also challenged from the clients as well, because my name is not known in the industry. A massive challenge to overcome, but I know I can do it because I've done it before, and I hope I can do it as well. But that's how you build confidence, by looking back your history and say, you know what, I've done it. And then if you're new to your career, and if you haven't had that kind of success, that's great, because you can fail, right? You can fail. Feel free to fail, because then that can again become your confidence, or that can get rid of your fears, because you know what, failure was okay. I'm I survived. I can make mistakes again, and that's another confidence that come out of failing as well.
And we learn so much from our mistakes, right?
100%.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. So what about productivity? Do you have a kind of a productivity tip that you definitely want to share?
Sure. So I have some view on this. My last assignment in London, I was there for 4 years. I had a female manager, quite senior manager, and I learned a lot from working for her. And so she had 6 managers who report up to her, and I was one of the 6 managers, right? And she wanted to assign a project to one of the managers. And before a manager's meeting, she pulled me aside and said, you know what, I'm going to ask one of the managers to take on this project. And I don't want you to raise hand, because I know you're good. This is not something that's fancy. It's not something sexy. It's not something that you can talk to your very senior boss in a company, because it was nothing fancy. And I don't want you to take it on, because I know you can do it. And these things are usually taken by women. And I said, wow, amazing. That's great, because I was going to raise my hand, because it's something that's okay. If I can help you, I will do it, right? And looking back, I think, or even looking at the work now in Tokyo, there's a lot of admin work, like underground admin work, that's done by female. Even comparing to male colleagues on the same position, because women are very good at multitasking. Women are very good at finding it, trying to not to let the ball drop. Like women are very good at that, because like we can look at different things and make sure that you fill in a gap, so that nothing goes wrong, right? But sometimes I think we need to stop that. We need to stop doing something that we are capable of, but that doesn't lead us to another career step forward.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, at least you need to be aware. I think at least you need to be aware, like, I'm taking this on, but I know it's not something that I shouldn't be doing. You know what I mean?
Right. Really questioning about what you do say yes to. So would you agree that women especially have this tendency to say yes to things, or to offer to help out of a feeling of wanting to be liked and accepted by people.
Yeah, I think so. 100%. Especially in Japan, I think I feel that I feel that way.
Yeah. And then it turns out that we say yes to so many things and then get totally overloaded. And then you can't be your best. You can't perform your best, which is like what you were saying there.
Exactly. You need some room to breathe on your day to day.
Yeah.
Especially when you're balancing, life and work, when you're married or have kids or, have, people to look after, then it's important that you have that kind of space and you have to create that space somehow.
Yeah.
It's sort of a challenge.
What are your, what's your advice on saying no? So when someone asks you to do something and you recognize that this is maybe not the best use of your time, because this is a question that I know a lot of women struggle with. So what's your advice on saying no?
I struggle with that as well. I really do. But knowing the time is limited, right? You would suggest something like, okay, you know what? Maybe I'm not the best person, or you know what? I have a recommendation, because that person is giving me work because the person wants to get that work done.
Yeah.
Right. And if there's a specific reason why I have to do it, then I want to know the reason, and that could make sense for me to do it.
Yeah.
Or if the task just had to get done, then you help the person get that done, but maybe not by you, by suggesting other people.
Yeah, exactly. I think having that conversation with the person, saying, well, why are you specifically coming to me? Because there may be something that, you're missing about why is it that they're asking you. And then you can find that out. And then if somebody else can still fulfill that role, then it often makes sense to ask somebody else or to introduce somebody else.
Exactly. And you just don't want to say, no, I'm not doing, right? And you can't do that.
Give an alternative, give options.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what about getting results? So getting the results that are meaningful for you in your work or your life. What are your thoughts on that, or any advice you have on getting results?
You have to know what your goal is, because if you, I'm sure people say to anyone, but it's like you're driving, right? You're driving. If you don't know where you're going, you're not gonna get to that place because you're not aiming for it, right? And it doesn't mean that you just want to go up higher. You can be a product specialist, or there's this many ways of you being successful and many ways to set your goal. But if you don't have that, and maybe your goal is just to stay put for the next year because there's a lot going on outside of work, right? Which is okay. Yeah. But I think having a goal or having a vision of where you want to be in your career, I think is quite important.
Yeah, definitely. As you say, otherwise, I mean, things just happen in your life, and you get directed by other people's priorities rather than thinking of what's really important for you.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Well, this has been so inspiring, all the tips around communication and confidence and productivity and getting results. Is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners today?
Sometimes. So I have this, I take advantage of being Japanese sometimes, because there's a lot of disadvantages of being a woman or being Japanese. So I wanted to win it back sometimes. So being an Asian woman, people think you're submissive, you're quiet, you're gonna say yes, and you're polite, right? You have all that image, and you kind of follow that because that's kind of who you are. But when there's some things that you have to fight, and it happens like once or twice a year, like something really big that you just cannot follow whatever your leaders are saying or whatever the direction the business is going. And once a year or two, I just become very upset. right? And then people go, whoa, Noriko is upset. Like, we need to listen to her because I have not seen her like this. This is not her usual self. So I had to bring in some like British or American self sometimes, and it works. It works because people surprised that you're upset, right? Because you're very polite always.
Yeah. That's great.
Taking advantage of your culture a little bit.
Yeah, well, and also it's about, most of the time you're dealing with things calmly, but when something's really, really important, and it's about, to me, it's like, it's honne, right? It's like really when you feel really upset about something, and you actually show that, so that you're being very honest.
And I think communication is something that everybody has to work on. There's no perfect communicator, I don't think, in this world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So taking on feedback is another thing that I'm very careful about. And especially the constructive feedback. You don't want to hear if you don't have to.
Yeah.
But as you kind of become more experienced in your field, or like if you're 20 years in the company, not many people give you feedback.
Yeah.
Right. And it's important for me to receive constructive feedback. So whenever I'm presenting, I ask somebody beforehand, like, I really want honest feedback out of my presentation. And can you please, give me your opinion after my presentation? And then, people kind enough to do that, right? Because people understand that I don't just want to hear good things.
Right.
So they are prepared to give you constructive feedback in the very best manner. And that's something that I do to improve my communication.
Yeah. To encouraging people to give you feedback, because
Exactly.
So valuable. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. This has been lots and lots of inspiration for our listeners and for those who are watching the video. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I look forward to meeting you in person so we can chat.
Yes, same here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.